Hey y'all, another awesome week of Come Follow Me study. This is covering the book of Judges. So if you haven't read this book before, it was kind of compiled around 400 BC, although it happened way before that, as we know. It's like a historical account, so we're missing a lot of information on the people we're going to talk about. So we're going to give grace and no judgment. And it was a different time as well, remember. So, there's more to these stories, and there's a lot of information, as I said, that we just don't know. But the book of Judges covers 12 individual judges, and not all of them are named clearly. And there's some other awesome people that come into their stories as well. We're going to talk about 5 judges and one awesome person who I think is really cool this week. Yeah, basically that, and just look at some points of how their stories can teach us things today. So let's start off in Judges chapter 3 verses 5 to 11. Now this is Othniel's story. So what happens during this time is that the Israelites, and actually the Come Follow Me manual gives you a really good introduction to Judges, but the Israelites, after Joshua died, it seems to be that they didn't really teach their children. And they also hadn't actually gotten rid of all the people that were in Canaan completely. And then there's, of course, multiple places around that area. If you look on the map now to where Israel is, because that's what it's now called, there's a lot of lands around that want that land. And that war still going on over that land. Interesting. Very interesting. Don't you just love how people fight over stuff? All right, so let's look at Othniel's story, because it seems... Oh, my chair's sunk, so I'll just adjust this. Here we go. Huh. Yes, my chair is broken. Anyway, so Othniel is actually Caleb, who we talked about last week, who I love. This is Caleb's nephew. So it would seem that in his family, they taught their children, because Othniel's good dude. Not all the judges were actually good. Some of them not so good. But yeah, so the children, you read in chapter 3, the children dwelt among the Canaanites and all the different ites. And 6, the daughters got married to the sons, and the sons got married to the daughters, and you have that. So the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and they started worshipping Balaam and in the groves. And in the groves was where they did ritualistic sacrifice of babies, and there was ritualistic prostitution. It was bad. These people were as evil, if not more, than those in Noah's time when they got killed with the flood. So, bad people. So there's a lot of violence in this book of Judges, a lot of violence. But it would make a really good movie, so hang in there with it. But yeah, we read down in verse 9, because they then fell to the king of Mesopotamia and were captives. So in verse 9, Othniel rises up. The Lord calls him to be this, they call him a judge. It's more like a kind of a prophet calling to lead the people out of captivity. And he rises up, and in 10 the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and they went out to war, and they won. Because Othniel is righteous, and he led an army of righteous people. And so then they had a 40 years rest. So that's pretty much all we really know about Othniel. We don't really know a whole lot about his family or anything like that. However, we can kind of see by the indication that he was raised up as Caleb's nephew, and Caleb, as we know, would be awesome, that the probability of them teaching the gospel and carrying on those traditions of living in covenant Israel is highly likely, especially with his success of getting out from under the thumb of the Moabites. So yeah, it would seem that way. So my question is really, how does family and their example influence our lives? So how does the family you have, or family you've seen, family you've adopted, family that you have that are actually not family, but that what you call family, how does their example influence our lives? It greatly does, doesn't it? So we have here an account of why the Israelites still do not have peace. They had treaties with some remaining Canaanites. They did that, and you'll find that in chapter 2, verses 1 to 3, even though the angel of the Lord told them not to. So that when they started intermarrying, problems began. Because when you intermarry, it's not bad to intermarry like religious faiths or races or anything. It is totally fine, as long as they respect. We go back to last week, we're talking about as long as they respect your religion. What happened is that because they were worshipping Balaam and Baal and all those gods that were not real, it led them away. It diverted them from their focus on Christ because they didn't have that strong testimony. So that's what kind of happened to them. Because I know I've got friends that are in interfaith marriages and it's just fine. And then I've got friends that are in interfaith marriages that are really not fine. So it is a big deal for your children to really consider that in your marriage, how it's going to affect them, and have a plan with your partner ahead of time so that it's very clear as to what you're going to do with those children. Or even if you're not living as a good member of any church, how are you still influencing your children around that? Think about that. So yeah, it just seems that the children of Israel were not taught gospel things for the large part, but it would seem that Othniel was. So the Lord raises up Othniel, Caleb's nephew, to lead and bring peace. So how does this account teach the importance of family example and the influence it has on our lives and others? Because I think, and I believe, that Othniel would have been brought up with the covenants of covenant Israel. He would have been told the stories of his uncle and Joshua, who were friends. They personally knew Moses, so they would have told their family all of that stories of Moses and the time in the desert wandering. So these children would have known those miracles. They would have known the Lord, which is why I would say Othniel raised one of them up to do this. So the influence that we can have on our children, even if they're not personally your children, they might be your nieces, your nephews, your grandchildren, but family and the way they behave has a huge influence on the younger members of that family. So really keep that in mind, and don't argue in front of them, and really teach them good things. Even if they don't stay members of the church or they don't want to be religious, they can be good citizens. They can be wonderful people, and that is completely fine if they choose not to be part of church stuff. But your behavior will influence your children in a huge way, your whole family. So really keep that in mind. Have a plan in place. Have a thought with your, if you've got a partner. If you're single, then it's all up to you. But if you've got a partner, work that out beforehand, so it's not an issue. Have a plan, right? And it doesn't always go to plan, but at least you've got a plan. But anyway, long discussion we could have on that one, how the influence of the family just is a huge thing. But Elder Richard G. Scott, he said, one of the greatest blessings we can offer to the world is the power of a Christ-centered home where the gospel is taught, covenants are kept, and love abounds. And I did not grow up in a home like this, and I can tell you that I now have a home like this, and it is amazing. So you put every effort in, no matter how hard it is. It is so worth it to have a Christ-centered home where the gospel is taught, covenants are kept, and love abounds. There's so much peace and safety found in a world that is just disastrous and falling apart with shootings and wars and rumors of wars and, all that stuff, all that horrible stuff. Our homes are our safe havens. If that's where love abounds, covenants are kept, and the gospel is taught, that is our safety, and our children need that, and we need that. So that's what we can learn from Othniel, I believe. That's what we can learn from this one. What else could we learn? What do you got? Have some thoughts. Send them in. Let us know. Alright, we're going to go over to, say in chapter 3, we're going to look at 12 to 30. That's Ehud's story. I'll see you there.